Welcome to the Personality Couch podcast, where we discuss all things personality and clinical practice. I'm your host, Doc Bach, and I'm here with my co-host, Doc Fish. We are both licensed clinical psychologists in private practice, and today we are continuing our series on pathological narcissism. We have talked quite a bit about different types, subtypes, and themes, but in this episode, we're going to take a closer look at the dangerous, exploitative, malignant narcissist and the dark characteristics that make up this personality. Let's jump in. Let's start at the very beginning. So in 1964, malignant narcissism was first discussed in Fromm's book, The Heart of Man.
Fromm wrote about human evil, calling it the syndrome of decay.
Ooh.
He notes it's the quintessence of evil, the most severe pathology, and the root of the most vicious destructiveness and inhumanity that prompts men to destroy for the sake of destruction and to hate for the sake of hate.
Oh my goodness.
It's a triad combination of three things: necrophilious orientation, incestuous symbiosis, and malignant narcissism.
Okay. I'm sorry, what? Back it up. I'm familiar with malignant narcissism, but what are these other big, fascinating words?
So necrophilious orientation is about attraction to death.
Okay. Hang on. This takes me back to abnormal psych in grad school. Like, isn't necrophilia an erotic attraction to dead bodies?
Why, yes, it is. And that fits with what it kind of is. So it's an attraction to death. It's death orientation. So going against life-giving stuff and then engaging in death-oriented stuff.
Ooh.
So things like detachment, laziness, indifference, lack of effort, instead of life-generating things. And then, so like Hitler was a pure example of this because of his fascination with death and destruction.
Wow. This is hard to wrap my head around. So there's something stimulating, erotic or otherwise, about death, destruction, decay, and bodies.
You got it. So passion, fascination with, obsession, like it is an attraction towards death stuff.
Wow. Okay.
So the next one is incestuous symbiosis or regressive incestuous ties.
Okay. Big words again. Help me understand.
Basically, it's just a desire to join with someone powerful in order to split off the self and therefore split off personal responsibility. So they choose a host person and like blend with them.
Okay, I think I'm getting the picture. So they become one and unhealthily attached to a specific person to whom they defer responsibility. And maybe someone that reminds them of mom and dad, or no?
It can be mom and dad, but it doesn't have to be. For example, it can be like a delusional attachment to a previous serial killer that we want to copy and be, but usually it does stem from mom or dad or early attachments.
Okay, so this actually reminds me of Alfred Hitchcock here, like 1960s Psycho, Norman Bates. Please tell me you're familiar.
I'm not. Tell me about it.
Okay. So spoiler alert, if you plan on watching it. So the main character, Norman Bates, his hobby was literally taxidermy, death orientation. He killed his mother and her lover a decade prior because he was jealous. He mummified mom, so he essentially taxidermied her to assuage his own guilt about killing her. Yeah.
Ew.
He treated his mummy, pun intended,
Oh my gosh,
as if she was still alive. And he became one with her by taking on her persona when he was attracted to another woman. So by fusing with Mummy, it was her personality inside of him that killed the two women.
Oh, gross. Okay, so he was literally Mummy. Like he was not separated from her. He was her and wrapped her up to be with him. Ew.
Yeah.
Okay, Norman kills mom's lover. And then mom, as Norman, kills Norman's lovers.
Right.
So their relationship on some level is incestuous and completely enmeshed.
Yes, this sounds like what you're talking about in this triad that Fromm was conceptualizing.
I think so. But let's get off that yucky topic and start on our main topic, because the third part is malignant narcissism.
Yes, finally a term I recognize. Tell me about this one.
Malignant narcissism, there's specialness. They're special and accomplished simply because they are them, not because they put in effort. Reality doesn't matter. They're only focused on things that enhance the self. They're egotistical and xenophobic.
Okay, so xenophobic, that's like the fear of foreign concepts, like ideas, people, basically anything that's different than them.
And then they are isolated in their superiority, profoundly alone in an echo chamber of one's own making.
Ooh, that's deep. Okay, so essentially Fromm said that malignant narcissism is one of 3 very deviant traits needed to be evil. But the other funky, like dead body stuff, becoming one with mummy, aren't necessarily part of malignant narcissism, right?
Correct.
Okay, but if you have malignant narcissism, you're a third of the way there to pure evil?
Yes. It's like only one ingredient, just one part. Evil is much more complex.
Moving on.
Sure. So let's move to what early researchers had to say on malignant narcissism. Rosenfeld, 1971, described a form of grandiose narcissism that was at a delusional level, and it included feeling all-powerful or all-knowing. So they are cruel, ruthless, and sadistic, completely rejecting dependency or connection to anyone else, so much so that they find absolutely no value in other people.
Wow. Okay, so we're still within this grandiose domain of narcissism. Like, malignant is big, it's in your face, and potentially it sounds like a disintegrated or very unhealthy version of narcissism.
Yeah, like it's a little bit worse of a form of narcissism. Then Kohut, 1976, described a narcissist who was charismatic and or messianic with paranoid flavors.
Okay, I can see how this would create an like us versus them mentality, or like, I'm the Messiah, fear the other. Like that sounds like what you're talking about here.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Then Kernberg, 1984, actually used the term malignant narcissism and defined it as grandiosity with sadistic strivings.
Ooh.
So they dehumanize themselves and thus others. They run from their humanity and any emotional connections in order to avoid being destroyed by others. So instead, they focus on sexual and aggressive input.
So this sounds like more like an animal than a human, like trending towards inhuman, but never not human. Like it's more so like primal instincts are ruling the brain.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it. Like it's about base needs.
Oof.
But since then, researchers have viewed malignant narcissism in a few different ways. So some think it should be its own separate disorder, using terms like traumatized narcissist, the tyrant, the psychopathic narcissist, and of course the malignant narcissist.
Very interesting names.
Then some don't really think that it even falls in the narcissism category. So it's previously been viewed as a delusional disorder, a paranoid character structure, sociopathy, and a regression from pathological narcissism to antisocial personality disorder.
Wow. I can see how like delusions, paranoia, and being a psychopath or sociopath could be part of malignant narcissism. And it also sounds like multiple researchers thought that malignant narcissism is basically like a type of narcissism that is falling apart psychologically.
Oh dear, yes. Now there's a whole spectrum of this that I could go into, but the main point in research for this is that malignant narcissism is like worse than narcissistic personality disorder, but not quite as like bad as psychopathy.
Somewhere in the scary middle.
Yes. Now, most researchers, most of them, support Kernberg's understanding that malignant narcissism is made up of 4 things.
Okay.
So a narcissistic core, antisocial behavior, sadism or aggression, and paranoia.
Ooh.
So let's unpack these a little more.
Okay, well, I can start with the first one. I can speak to the narcissistic personality core. So this is textbook grandiose narcissism, where they run from their fragile shame, feeding their own self-esteem by taking from others and tearing them down. So this can look like being irritable, empty, and angry emotionally. And then interpersonally, they are sensitive to criticism. They're cold and they lack empathy and show no remorse. They show no guilt and no conscience, and they can't have deep relationships. But interestingly, they are charming, promiscuous, and seductive on the surface. So that's how they kind of lure in people in the relationships, because of that power and charm. But they're still exploitative and entitled. And then, of course, they need admiration, and they are extremely envious and materialistic.
So a great example is Tylem's analysis of the movie American Psycho.
Ooh.
So the main character, Patrick, has a morning routine that is filled with ridiculously high maintenance, image-based acts with like a ton of skincare and grooming.
Oh.
Yeah, it's satirically a portrayal of grandiose narcissism, though later it's obvious that Patrick's a malignant narcissist.
Okay, so you still have that superficial image-based grandiosity within the malignant narcissism.
Yes, and one of my favorite quotes from this movie that highlights the narcissism is when Patrick stated, "There's an idea of Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there."
Oh my goodness, that's chilling. Wow. So he is speaking here to his profound sense of emptiness.
Now later there's an intimacy scene where he is shown constantly and honestly weirdly admiring himself in the mirror with absolutely no focus on the partner, who is one of two paid participants.
Oh, wow. That doesn't surprise me, looking at himself in the mirror. And interesting that the participants were also paid. There's so much here. Wow.
And then the paid participants were renamed by him because he didn't care for their actual names.
Whoa, power play. So the names serve his ego, and he didn't like them, so he changed them.
All right, so narcissistic core is the first part of malignant narcissism. Now, the second part is antisocial behavior.
Okay.
So they understand morality, but they rationalize their actions to fit with their antisocial behavior. And because of this, they are often great at not getting caught.
Okay, so it sounds like cognitively, they understand the idea of being moral and having human ethics. But like, how do they rationalize their antisocial behavior? Like, what would that look like?
Sure. So their behavior is like obviously needed to serve their ego because they matter and others don't.
Okay. So maybe like the thought that person had it coming, or like I had to do what I had to do.
Exactly.
It's about them. It's not about the other person.
Yep. And they'll lie, steal, financially exploit, and sometimes even assault or murder others for the purpose of self-enhancement and protecting their image.
Oh my goodness. I can see how this would be on a spectrum, malignant narcissism. So I'm imagining this could be like not paying child support and like sweet talking the judge without consequences. But then on the other side, domestic violence, assault, fearing for your life. I can just see that this can be a range of things.
Sure. A less severe example in the movie American Psycho, Patrick lies to his secretary about his reservations to the seemingly most prestigious restaurant and keeps up his lie even when the secretary logically challenges him.
So he can't be caught lying because he needs to protect his image.
Correct. But this is important. This is not antisocial personality disorder, just antisocial behaviors, because they can actually have loyalty and concern for specific people, but of course, play into their self-enhancement.
Okay, this feels important here. So someone with antisocial personality disorder is disconnected completely from people or a community. They are anti-social. social or against being social or against the social group. But malignant narcissists can have kind of like an ego posse, like singing the praises and propping them up. So it's very similar to grandiose in that way.
Yeah. And they might commit like one or maybe a few crimes, but usually it's not a lifestyle of crime. They also might try to maybe commit the perfect crime.
Okay, that's super interesting. Would this be for like ego mastery?
Yeah, it would feed the grandiose narcissism. Like they would be superior, the best.
That's nasty.
It quite is. So it reminds me of a 2016 case study that described a doctor who murdered his wife and children.
Oh.
But actually, he wasn't a doctor. He was just faking it. And then he was faking his social status. Now, upon narcissistic injury, because he thought he was about to be caught, he killed his close relatives and unsuccessfully attempted suicide.
Whoa.
So he was able to maintain those relationships. And technically, like he had loyalty to his family because he considered them part of himself. And then he like tried to take them out with him.
Oh, ew. Okay. So this is similar to that enmeshment stuff that Fromm was talking about in the evil trifecta. So the small group of people or this guy's family is an extension of the ego and they become one. Like you are an extension of me.
You got it.
Wow, that is messed up.
Sure is. All right. So we had narcissistic core as the first part, antisocial behavior as the second part. Now we have egocentric sadism or aggression as the third part.
Ooh.
So remember, they want to dehumanize. So they project any hatred they have of themselves onto other people. They idealize the part of them that is rageful, aggressive, destructive, violent, and revengeful in order to protect themselves. So essentially, they make sure to victimize others so that they don't end up being a victim themselves.
So this reminds me of Paranoia. Kill or be killed.
Yeah, sure. And then to do this, they have to suppress their moral compass and then rationalize their cruelty. So they can portray like joyful cruelty and sadism.
Oh, yuck.
An example from the movie American Psycho is when Patrick's euphoria is very evident when he's murdering his coworker.
Oh.
Also, he like murders a homeless person because he doesn't have anything in common with him.
Oh, that's unbelievable. That's heartless.
Now, along the same lines, Tylem's analysis of the movie American Psycho notes, Patrick's devouring greed is depicted in bed, where he bites his partners until they bleed, devouring them.
What? Okay. Oh my goodness. What you're saying is that if you are dating a malignant narcissist, some of these themes may come out in the bedroom.
Oh boy. Very, very possible. And of course, not all of those bedroom behaviors mean that there's malignant narcissism.
But there might be.
Let's use a less kinky example.
Okay.
So Patrick's aggression came out when another character showed Patrick and his coworkers his superior business card with gold lettering. Patrick couldn't handle it. He followed the other character into the restroom and was shown intensely desiring to destroy the other character through strangulation. But the other character's reaction of wanting to turn it into a sexual encounter seemed to snap Patrick out of the aggression, and I guess we're back at that kinky spot. But
oh no, goodness gracious. Wow. Well, when we start talking about these deviant personality types, there's almost always sexual deviance too, like of all kinds.
So a quote to sum up the sadism or aggression, again from the movie American Psycho, is when Patrick says, "There are no more barriers to cross. All I have in common with the uncontrollable and the insane, the vicious and the evil, all the mayhem I have caused and my utter indifference towards it, I have now surpassed. My pain is constant and sharp, and I do not hope for a better world for anyone. In fact, I want my pain to be inflicted on others. I want no one to escape. But even after admitting this, there's no catharsis. My punishment continues to elude me, and I gain no deeper knowledge of myself. This confession has meant nothing."
Oh, goodness gracious. So this is a powerful example of taking pain out on the masses, right? Anything to absolve the self from the pain, like get away from the self, put it onto the other. But even then, these character types are empty and they feel empty. They can't get away from it.
Now, there's also a tendency to attempt to like win or like triumph over an authority figure through sadistic means. Essentially, they try to like beat fear and pain by giving it to others. And then the winning and the beating like reinforces their own grandiosity.
Can you give me an example? Like, what would that look like to outdo an authority figure?
Yeah, Kernberg actually mentioned that suicide in these clients is a way to beat the therapist, aka authority, because then the client has the power and the therapist has like failed.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so no one and nothing else can take me out. Like, I'll do it myself and punish you in the process.
Right. Like their sadism can be turned towards others, but also towards themselves. So they can actually be chronically suicidal without depression. So viewing suicide as a way to master their own fate and triumph over fate, crisis, or just other people.
Yikes. So this reminds me of what we talked about like last episode where there's, I think the quote was like a megalomaniacal triumph over death. Like grandiosity, rawr, I'm going to conquer death in this sadistic, twisted, put it on you type of way. That's demented.
Oh, quite. Well, let's use a different example this time. So in 1993, Mancia analyzed a free association writing by a previous client towards his therapist. The client actually ended up committing suicide. So it's called Love and Death in the Transference. So in that paper, a client writes things like, I give her the money, she's the parasite, not me.
Oh my word, this twisted BS again.
Right. It's about mastery and power. It's like superiority with the flavor of sadism.
Oh gosh. Okay, so obviously this is really bad for relationships, clearly. I imagine that there's like severe impairment also in their parenting, right? It's just either inadequate or just plain bad. And then in romantic relationships, it would be superficial and probably a lot of conflict as well. And then at work, I mean, I can't imagine working for or with someone like this, like toxic, tyrannical work environment for sure.
Absolutely. So now, again, back to the movie American Psycho. Patrick dictates what his secretary wears. Also, he's engaged with no care for his fiance. He's like only engaged to this other person for money.
Wow. Okay, I'm getting the sense that these types aren't kind to women or honestly really any humans.
So we have malignant narcissism is made up of narcissistic core, antisocial behaviors, sadism or aggression, and now the last one is a deeply paranoid orientation towards life. So they harbor intense mistrust, viewing others as enemies, often being preoccupied with conspiracy theories.
So the world is out to get me.
Exactly. They see the world as dangerous and bad, but their grandiosity protects them from this like paranoid anxiety. So this is where they feel so special that they view others as pawns in the game of life where it's either kill or be killed.
Woof.
Yes, and then their aggression and violence is, of course, rationalized in a delusional way, usually with political or religious explanations, which means they're often drawn to terrorist groups or other forms of sadistic groups.
Of course, it's an easy outlet for their narcissistic rage, right?
Yep. And they live on the edge of psychosis. So they can actually have like micro psychotic episodes where they desire to punish another to avoid their own internal pain.
That's the instability piece again. Like these are not healthy character structures, obviously. Like there's a lot of different places that they can go, but they are on the verge of a psychotic break.
Yeah, essentially. Now, in the movie American Psycho, Patrick has some paranoid delusions that a detective is out to get him. But then, like, the detective's non-existent.
Of course.
So there are some hints at like mini psychotic episodes, and there's actually a question of whether the crimes were committed at all or if he was just hallucinating.
Good grief. So unstable character structures, not safe in any way. Like whether he did this in real life or not, like he still has the capacity because it's part of him.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So we talked about some pretty extreme examples here, but the burning question that I have is, are all malignant narcissists psychopaths?
Okay, so a researcher named Stone put some things on a continuum, and basically what we can say is that not all malignant narcissists are psychopaths, but all psychopaths would have some flavor of malignant narcissism.
Okay, so not all malignant narcissists reach a psychopathic level, but to be a psychopath, malignant narcissism is one ingredient. Is that right?
I think so. And I think maybe that leads us right back to Fromm's topic of evil.
Yes. There was another question that I thought of as we were talking. I know Fromm had his own idea of what evil is and kind of that death preoccupation, but is that part of malignant narcissism? Fromm said it was separate, and we gave a lot of different examples. But do you think, as a professional, that that is part of malignant narcissism, the death orientation?
I think that it doesn't have to be. I like Fromm's conceptualization of evil. So I think you can only have the malignant narcissism without the other two pieces. But then if you do have like the malignant narcissism and maybe one of the others, I think it just makes you like even worse. And you're going towards that psychopathy, towards violence and evil.
Sure. So the more things that you have in that triad, the closer you are to psychopathy. Okay. Yeah. Which we'll get to that in another episode.
Ooh.
So in sum, it sounds like these types, these malignant narcissistic types can be found anywhere. Is that right? Yeah. So some would be behind bars, but then some are in boardrooms. Some are in bedrooms. Some are in politics. Others are in academia. Like wherever there's power in leadership, there's a higher chance of seeing a malignant narcissist. And I'm just thinking of like interpersonal relationships as well. Like why would we be drawn to these types? And I think it comes back to that grandiosity. Like there's something about them that is superficially charming and they can lure us in. And it seems like because they crave power and they want to be in charge, it's like, oh yeah, this person is strong. They know what they want. I'll follow them. So they often rise to the top of leadership positions for, companies, for countries, it could be anything. But then we can gravitate towards them in romantic relationships because of that perceived strength. And they're capable of love bombing too. Like, I'm going to lure you in, learn your weaknesses, so then I can capitalize on that and pounce. Right? So I'm just thinking of all the different ways that this can show up. And I guess they don't always have to be like as slimy and chill inducing as Hannibal Lecter, right? In Silence of the Lambs. That's probably more psychopathic, or even like as well known and public as Hitler, also maybe psychopathic, but they will all have the same traits of grandiosity, antisocial behavior, which is like rule or law breaking, sadism and aggression, which is harm to others, and then that paranoia, like others are out to get me, I need to act first.
Correct.
Whew, that is a lot to take in. And on that note, that's a wrap for today. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of The Personality Couch. Make sure to check out our blogs that coincide with these episodes at www.personalitycouch.com. And as always, don't forget to give us a thumbs up or rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. And on YouTube, hit that bell so you don't miss a single episode in our Narcissism series. Be well, be kind, and we'll see you next time on The Personality Couch. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute a professional relationship. If you're in need of professional help, please seek out appropriate resources in your area. Information about clinical trends or diagnoses are discussed in broad and universal terms and do not refer to any specific person or case.